Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Daisha Jones, and I'm with Expeditions in Education. Welcome to the Great Lakes Odyssey. Before we get started, we have some housekeeping for you. We want you to keep your microphones on mute. Please keep those on mute. Sometime during the stream, we may ask if you have questions, and you can raise your hand, and then our amazing moderators, Ms. Zimmerman, Ms. Brown, and Ms. Bell will ask you to unmute so you can ask your questions. And as you heard, today are prize package days. So we have some classrooms that are going to win a whole bag of stickers and buttons. So be on your best behavior today so we can draw your name. Again, this is the Great Lakes Odyssey. Let me take you back to the slides for just a moment so we can talk about who brought you here today, and we're really excited about that. So we are at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore on Lake Superior. Now we're located at a place called Miners Castle. I want to show you a quick video of where we are so you can see the beauty of this place. Now this was filmed 1 year ago today at sunset. So if you look around this beautiful blue water, these amazing rocks, which are called Pictured Rocks, and we are so lucky to be here today. We're here because of a couple of organizations. One of those is Save the Dunes. So thank you to Save the Dunes for making this happen. Another organization is the Great Lakes Research Education Center. Another one is Expeditions in Education, and all of this is made possible by the National Park Foundation. So can we give in your classrooms a round of applause, and for our studio audience, can we do a silent round of applause? There you go, thanking them for bringing us here today. Now you probably heard a little bit of clapping here, and that is because we have our first ever live stream studio audience. So we're going to turn the camera on them for just a moment, and they're going to wave, and look how quiet and sweet they're being. Don't think that's just the way they are. They're trying to win swag too, but I do think they're very nice and sweet. So give them a big wave, everyone. All right. So as you have been probably following us in our journey, we have created a book called The Heroes of the Great Lake Odyssey. And we are here today with these characters to see how we can change the world together. But Tony, Link, Oliver, Charlotte, and Layla are here to share with you today.
To share with you about their journey at Pictured Rocks. So today we're going to be journeying onto their page. And we are arriving at Pictured Rocks. We have a problem here. We need to restore the wilderness areas and help fish navigate around some barriers that have been created by human activity. So we're really excited. We're going to learn about what is a wilderness area, and that is wilderness with a capital W. We're going to learn about the problems that have kind of resulted from some human activity and what the Park Service is doing to understand and think about maybe some of the solutions that we can offer.
I am excited about that. So Dr. Aaron, you've been with us for the last 10 days, it seems like. You're following us around.
I am following you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
All right, so I am Dr. Aaron Argelon. I'm a geologist by training, and I work with the Great Lakes Research and Education Center, or GLREC. And so I was really excited, and I sought out Daisha because I wanted to explore the things that we have in common in our Great Lakes parks. We are visiting now, of course, we're visiting Lake Michigan, we've been at Lake Erie, and now we've arrived at Lake Superior, our biggest and our deepest and our coldest and our clearest lake. So again, the Great Lakes are our largest freshwater reservoir, surface water reservoir on the planet. They hold about 21% of our Earth's fresh surface water. And so we're going to explore again how they are different, but they all have certain issues. And our resource managers at our national parks are working hard to do the science that helps our managers make decisions. And we're so glad that you can join us today.
And we're glad also to welcome rangers and biologists that actually work here at Pictured Rocks. I'd like to introduce to you Ranger Hannah. Ranger Hannah, tell us where you're originally from and how you got here.
Originally, I'm from downstate Michigan. So originally I'm from Ann Arbor, and I got here, I graduated college, and then I went out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I found out I really love talking to people, and I really love communicating why public lands are important. And I found this job here at Pictured Rocks, and being from downstate, a lot of us love the Upper Peninsula and love Pictured Rocks, and so that's what brought me here, and I love it. I've been here for a little over a year now.
Well, would you tell us a little bit about what a wilderness area is and why they're even important?
Absolutely. And so today when we're talking about wilderness, like Aaron said before, we're talking about a capital W wilderness, which means it's designated wilderness by the government and, you know, the people of the United States have said this area is really important, whether that's for an ecological reason or an aesthetic reason or recreation reason. And so when that area is established as wilderness, there's certain things that we have to do and we have to keep in mind when we're taking care of it.
Well, I've heard a myth that all wilderness areas are untouched by humans. Is that true?
You know, Daisha, a lot of people think that. And actually, it's not true. Wilderness areas all over the world, all over the United States have had many lives. They've been around for thousands of years, and humans have been around in those areas for just as long. So going way back, you know, we have indigenous tribes that have had history here and still continue to use that land. And specifically here at Pictured Rocks, the Beaver Basin Wilderness used to be used by a pipeline company, and they actually had their corporate retreat in the Beaver Basin. So they built cabins and they built, you know, other structures within the wilderness area. So these areas have definitely been used by people for a very long time, but now they're free from modern human influences.
Well, I want to bring on another person that works here, a biologist. Leah, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you give us a real quick history on where you came from and how you got here?
Sure. So I've worked at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore for over 20 years, so I've been here a very long time. I went to school downstate, Michigan State, came back up here, home. This is home for me in the Upper Peninsula, so it's great to work in a park that's close to my hometown.
So now, by trade, you're a biologist,
Yes.
is this correct? Mm-hmm. So in the Park Service, we have rangers, interpretation rangers, education, but you actually work on resource management teams?
Yes, I'm a biologist, and I've spent most of my career focused on aquatic resources, but I do a little bit of everything in this park, so for science.
Yesterday, you and Dr. Aaron, we went out to some areas in Beaver Basin, so I'm going to pull up a quick video, and I want you to sort of tell me what is happening in this video. Let's pull that up now.
Sure, so this is Lowney Creek. This is a creek that's in Beaver Basin Wilderness. And so we had a short hike out, and there Dr. Aaron is looking at some equipment that we're using to monitor and collect some data in the stream to help us make some decisions in the future about some dams that we'll be talking about today. So she's got a piece of equipment there that records temperature, water levels, and that's in a tube to protect it within the stream. And then we take that piece of equipment out of the tube and we download it, so we don't have to take our computer into the field. We can actually put it on another device and download the data and upload it to a computer later on. So that's what I'm doing there and handing it back to Dr. Aaron. And then we also do a lot of other work in the stream. We're looking at, we're collecting measurements on stream discharge, which is the volume of water flowing through the stream. And that's important information to help us make decisions about the dams that we'll be talking about today. And here Aaron is looking at some of the substrate or sediments in the stream, and you can see it looks very mucky.
Yeah, now we've moved up actually just by the dam, correct?
Yeah, so this is near the dam and the bottom is much different. And this is a pond. So the purpose of a dam is to hold back water. And here you have a pond that is upstream of the dam, and the dam is holding all that water back, and it looks a lot different than the stream that you saw in the first shot.
Well, I want to talk about this area, and I want to tell the kids that are watching over here. You didn't see that part, but we'll make sure you do get to see that part. But talk a little bit more about what Hannah said. Why is this place dammed up? And then what are you wanting to do to restore this?
So as Hannah said, this area of Beaver Basin Wilderness, part of it was used as a retreat, actually for fishing and hunting. So several dams were put in throughout this watershed to create fishing ponds, just for recreation opportunities. So that was before the basin or before the wilderness was established, even before that part became part of Picture Rock's National Lakeshore. And so we know that's impacting the environment, the stream, quite a bit. So we are looking at different options of what we can do to improve the ecosystems in this area.
And that makes a lot of sense. What do you want to add, Dr. Aaron?
Well, I was going to just say that it was just beautiful when we went out there. And I know that when I went down there, I was a little surprised because I thought, oh, if you're going to have a wilderness area, again, it's a spot that has never been touched by people. But you also had a couple of pictures with you of maybe some of the things that they had out there, some cabins.
So this is down, so Lowney Creek flows into a large lake called Beaver Lake. It's very picturesque. So a lot of cabins were built along that lake. So there was quite a bit of development many years ago, and now these cabins have been taken down, but it did look quite a bit different.
Yeah, and to explain again a little bit about that video too, we started in the downstream area, the area that was kind of, I guess, could we say that that's sort of the more natural way that the stream would look? It was filled with rocks at the bottom and gravel, a really great environment for those macroinvertebrates to kind of start at the bottom of the food chain. And so, as Leah explained to us yesterday, we were collecting a lot of data down there as sort of the baseline data before any action might be taken at all. And then that latter shot was sort of where I learned a dam is not a dam is not a dam, or all dams are not created equal. We actually saw in that video there was a little bit of a beaver dam there that was created by beavers, and then there was an earthen dam that was there to help hold back some of the water and create that pond, and then next to it is an actual concrete dam that also, that's kind of the man-made thing holding it back. And you saw in my hand all that muck. I was shocked, but again, holding back the water was kind of making organics kind of accumulate there and change the substrate and the environment, so it wasn't very rocky there at all.
So let's just recap that we had 3 types of dams again. We had the concrete dam that was put in there by humans. We had the earthen dams, and then we had beaver dams. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. You also talked about, I'm sure there's fish there, right? There's some type of fish. Hannah, can you show us a puppet of a fish that you might find in this water, and tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a brook trout. We have them here at Pictured Rocks, and they live in our inland lakes, and they live in our streams as well. And it's really important for these guys. They rely on cold water. A lot of the fish here and a lot of the animals here depend on cooler temperatures, and so they use that cold water. It helps them survive, and they also have to move up and down the stream into different areas around the Beaver Basin Wilderness to do different things, different parts of their life cycle, whether that's reproducing or feeding. So they really have to be able to get from place to place.
Yeah, and I just want to hold him because he's cute. But Leah, we were talking about how these fish are getting through those dams, and you told us something about over time, their fish sometimes create their own bypasses. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Well, yes, these dams have been in place for decades, and through time and weathering, there has been some wearing. We call it breaching of the dams. So there are some places where fish can sneak through, but overall it is quite an impediment for fish to get through, especially that concrete dam. But there is some weathering that's occurred over time.
Well, before we talk about one of the other dams, the beaver dams, can we talk a little bit about the words that were here that are sometimes scary, but if we understand them, we feel more confident, and that's climate change. What is happening at Beaver Basin and Pictured Rocks? How is climate change affecting us?
So we've in this area, we've seen a lot of different changes. We know our air temperature has increased. We know we're getting more precipitation. We know we have more frequent high-intensity precipitation events, so basically more frequent storm events. And then also water temperature. I've been assisting with monitoring water temperature in the lakes for over 20 years, and we have seen increases in our water temperature, and we expect that the same is happening in Lowney Creek. So we did look at the temperature in Lowney Creek and saw that some areas were much warmer than other areas in the creek, and those areas were downstream of the dams where the ponds are.
Yeah, this is very exciting to us. So as Hannah said, these are cold water streams, right? And cold water fish. And the creation of that earthen dam created a pond behind it with more surface area. And that surface area, I think your data was finding that, you know, the more surface area you have exposed to the sunlight, the more that could warm. And then that warm water moves through the dam, and some of its effects are then being carried downstream as well.
Well, before we get into a little bit more about the tools that we use and possibly building a beaver dam together, we do have a question from the chat. So, Ms. Zimmerman, let's tell us who this is.
This is from Mrs. Valen's class, and they would like to know what exactly is in the sediment. What pieces are we talking? And then we have one more from Miss Wood's class when you get that one finished.
So let me repeat this question for our studio audience. A question from Miss Valen's class is, what is in the sediment when they pulled the leaves and, when they pulled the stuff up from the bottom of the water, what was in it? Because it was real sludgy looking, like kind of yucky, swampy looking to me. So what was in that?
Do I get to answer? Because you know I love rocks and sediment.
Yes, because we could not pull her out of the streams yesterday. We had to stay there longer because of Dr. Aaron. But
yes,
tell us
I was
what's there.
so excited because in every river is going to be a little bit different. And in Indiana, we have sandy bottom rivers, but here there's really beautiful, there's some sand, but there's also gravel. So gravel is going to be anything larger than sand, which is up to 2 millimeters. And so we had lots of different gravels and then even larger cobbles and stuff that you would see in there. And so this was creating just a really great environment to watch the water ripple over, which allows more oxygen to come into the water. It allows spaces for the macroinvertebrates to hide, and even for the brook trout to kind of lay their eggs and kind of hide those eggs from predators. And so it's a beautiful stream environment. But of course, when we put in any kind of barrier, like a dam, whether it's an earthen dam or a concrete dam or a beaver dam, it then blocks some sediment upstream. It will change the speed of the water. And so downstream from the dam, that's where I put my hands in. And so we didn't find that beautiful gravel. Instead, what we were finding, because the water kind of was more still right there, it was accumulating a bunch of organic material and fine particles, which in a sense smothered. We called it kind of embeddedness. When you get the fine particles, they bury all that gravel. And then there's less hiding spaces for macroinvertebrates and less spawning area for the fish to then leave their eggs.
Great question from Miss Valen's class. And we have one more in the chat.
Well, actually, we've gotten several more, but the first one is from Miss Wood's class. They're wondering what the trout eat and who their predators are.
Oh, great.
So I'll give this to Hannah, I think. So the question is, what do the trout eat when they're in the water, and who are their predators?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the trout are part of a much bigger ecosystem. So they're eating things, things are eating them. And so what they're going to be eating are probably little insects, maybe smaller fish. If any of you have ever gone fishing, you kind of know that fish like to have those little bugs, those little insects, and then potentially what could be eating it, something larger, you know, maybe a bear, maybe an otter if they're around. So stuff like that. They're kind of in the middle of that food web there.
So we'll hold on to any more questions, but I do want to show a picture that Leah has. Leah, tell us about this.
So this is a picture of a brook trout. So this is the dominant predatory species that's in Lowney Creek, and that's what Hannah was showing. And so this is one of the species that we are concerned about, especially with climate change, especially with the dams, backing up water. You've got that larger surface area, warmer areas of water. Brook trout don't like lots of warm water, and they will avoid those areas and try to find a refuge for cold water. So,
Can you show our studio audience there that trout? So we're going to be asking you sometime in the next couple of days to start thinking about how you can help Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore and come up with some type of challenge, engineering challenge, design, or proposal to decide if we should keep the dams or if we should create a fish bypass. Now, that's pretty much the way it sounds. A way for fish to get through, to pass by a barrier. And we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. Before we do, though, I was really interested in the tools that you were using, those tools. So I think we're going to ask Ranger Hannah to pass just pass one over, and we'll let them talk about it. We won't even tell them. It's going to be like, guess the tool.
All right, we'll start with the big one.
So here comes the big one.
I'll hold that for you.
Tell us about this. Now, we saw you in the water with this, which is not very light.
No.
So you have to carry this around. Tell us what this does.
So this is a flow meter. This part that Ranger Aaron is spinning, that's called bucket wheels. So this is a way to, it'll measure the speed of the water, but more importantly, it'll also measure the volume of the water. So you take several measurements across the length of the stream, and up here is kind of a fancy calculator, and you put measurements of depth, where you are across the stream as you're going along. You usually have a meter tape stretched out, and it'll tell you what the velocity is for each small section of stream, and it'll add those all together at the end, and it'll give you a final measurement of the discharge or the volume of the water flowing through that area.
And this is a really fun thing for kids to do and teachers to do, is to set up a profile, and you take the depth at different areas, and then you create your volume with math.
Using math. Of course we're going to use math, and we're saying that loud. So in your local communities, you could even reach out to biologists and to people that are working on stream health to see if you could volunteer to be a community science and do some of this work. Now, I noticed we had some other tools. Can you get those out, Hannah? I'll put this back here. What is this, Leah?
So we have two different devices here. This one is a hobo data logger. So this one measures temperature and it measures water level, and we can program it to measure in any interval we want. So we program these to collect data every hour. So that's very helpful because we can't be in the stream every hour of the day. So it's really nice to be able to set a piece of equipment and collect the data that we're interested in learning about. And then, like I mentioned before, this is called a shuttle. And so you don't need to take a computer out to the field with you. When you remove this from the water, you can connect it and upload your data to the shuttle. And then when you get back to the office, you get the data off the shuttle onto your computer.
And in that video, you saw me kind of mimicking it. So we actually had a
little bit, Stacey.
We had a pretty I don't know, average looking pipe that was in the water. It stays there all the time. That was a stilling well. Can you remind us what the purpose of that stilling well was? And we drop this data logger and leave it in there all the time.
Yeah, so we put this data logger in the bottom of the stilling well, which is just basically a plastic pipe that's vertical and secured to the bottom of the stream. And so that's just holding it in place and protecting it from turbulence of the stream, because if this moves around too much, we're not going to get an accurate reading of what the water level is.
Great.
Very nice. And then let's show the quadrant, because this is something that teachers can create in their classroom to do some observations. But what do you use it for?
So this is something we can use to measure embeddedness. And so embeddedness is kind of a big word, but what it means is we're placing this on the bottom of the stream, and so you will see different rocks, and it's a measure of the degree to which the rocks are sunken into the bottom of the stream, or how much they are covered by sediment. And we want to know that sort of measurement because we're wondering if there is good habitat for fish to feed and to reproduce, and it's just a good way to collect some initial or baseline data prior to like a restoration project or other study.
Now remember, they're going out there multiple times and they are looking and they are then looking again, and then they're looking again, and they're seeing sort of how things are changing. Teachers, what I would encourage you to do, and my teachers that are here, these are just great observation pieces. Go to Home Depot or Lowe's or a local home improvement, get some little PVC pipe. It's a wonderful tool to just sit down on the ground and let kids observe everything that is moving through this habitat, which is basically what you're doing. You're looking to see, has the water changed in the last couple weeks? Could things live here? Macroinvertebrates, fish. So I like these simple tools. Now the others look pretty grown up, but this is a pretty simple tool that you can use. Hannah, we talked earlier about beaver dams. So can we talk a little bit about, maybe show a little something about a beaver dam? And I think we're going to build one. Are you guys okay with that? Let's build one. So let's show something first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first, before we talk about beaver dams, it's good to give a little introduction to beavers. Daisha, when you feel this, describe it to me.
Well, I feel like it's very soft.
Yes.
And if I go with the grain of the fur, if I go back a little bit, it puffs up, but it feels very slick.
Absolutely, yes. So beaver are mammals, and mammals typically are living on land, right? But beavers are a little different. They like to spend a lot of their time in the water, and they build their homes in the water, or partially in the water. And so they have a lot of really cool adaptations to living in the water. So they have these guard hairs that help water kind of cool off their back and they don't get super wet, but underneath those guard hairs, like what Daisha was saying, you know, when you kind of go this way against the fur, you start seeing that under layer, that super soft layer of the fur that keeps them nice and warm. So, like I said, they live in the water.
They do. And earlier, Leah and Dr. Aaron talked about those 3 types of dams: the concrete, human-made, people-made dam, the earthen dams, and then beaver dams. Now, teachers, I'm going to be sending you this today in an email, but you can make your own beaver dams, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to very carefully. Now, one of our rangers, Corinne, helped build this. It wasn't built by a beaver. Sorry, this was man-made. So she built it very nicely, and now I'm tearing it all apart. But let's talk through this for just a moment.
Absolutely. So kind of in here, so first of all, to build this, you kind of want a large, flat, plastic sort of container. And what we also have here building the base of the dam is clay. And that's very similar to what they might use in the wild, is like clay or mud, kind of creating kind of a seal almost to get the water kind of stopped at first. And then we've got other things like rocks in here and moss and kind of vegetation. And then of course we have wood and other pieces of trees and that sort of thing that beavers love. That's what you see kind of making up the big beaver dams.
Now, what would we do to make this more of a beaver dam? Now, I noticed there is a tube here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, beaver dams exist in rivers. So, to make it a little bit more realistic, we could add water. And so what we would do is we could take, you know, a spoonful of water, a cup of water, and add it to this side to pretend like it's the river coming down. And you could see how long it takes for the water to...
let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. I want to get wet.
All right.
Let's just do it. So we're going to pour some water in here. And try not to wet my shoes, but you better step away. Look at everybody leaving me. So we're pouring the water in. The dam is catching some of it.
Some of it.
But you guys are going to tell me, my studio audience especially, when you start seeing water come through the tube.
Oh, we're good.
We're good. So it does dam up the water, but it also lets it through. Mm-hmm. Now, either one of you, come back now, you have to get wet.
All right.
Either one of you, why are beaver dams important? What are they built for?
That's a great question.
Oh my goodness.
I think there's
stumped the scientist, or do we just have mixed?
Beavers, beavers like to make dams. They want to flood an area they're trying to reach. So they eat thinner bark of trees, and they want an easier way to reach those trees. So if they create a dam, it's easier for them to get to those trees and cut them down for food. And because they're also worried about predators like lots of other animals.
So they're making their life easier by flooding this area, maybe a little lazy there happening. How do beaver dams affect ecosystems?
Quite in many different ways. So you can imagine if you had a stream and then a dam is created, all of a sudden you have this larger ponded area. So areas that weren't covered by water are now covered by water, and you might have more different kinds of vegetation, different wetland plants that might grow. It just changes habitat for it might change the bottom of the stream because it's backing up some material. I could go on and on.
No, I think those are great way. I mean, they do disrupt, but it's also a natural disruption, right?
So this is what blew my mind yesterday, because I knew we were going to a place where there was a man-made dam, right? And we were considering, again, we're in a wilderness area, so maybe that doesn't belong in what is now a wilderness area. Again, human activity took place before this was designated as a wilderness area. And when we walked up, I was like, I see a beaver dam that, to me, is natural. And so right here in this one place, what had happened is, again, people had excavated out the ground, and they had built sort of this earthen dam and to create their reservoir. Next to that was then the concrete one, which is a level up as far as human impact, I would say. And then the water always wins. I like to say that. It had found a way to kind of bypass that itself over the decades and created a little channel on the side. And then the beaver moved in and they were like, a dam seems like a great idea. Let's put one here again too. So we just happened to have these three types of dams all right next to each other. And I learned yesterday from Leah, because I was able to walk across it, that the beaver are not actually in there during the day. Is that correct?
Right. That's a common misconception, that you see a beaver dam and you think the beavers are living inside that dam. That's not where they're living. That's just what they've built to create that pond. They actually live in lodges, or some of them will dig like in the side of the bank. Like they'll excavate the side of the bank and they will live in there rather than the lodge.
Well, let's take our pencils out for a moment, because this is going to be a great learning opportunity. So we have two vocabulary words. One is dams and one is lodges. So let's write those in our journal right now. And then for the dams, we can think about how we built with clay and wood and rocks. And then the lodges is their little Motel 6. That's where they're going to spend time. I'm feeling like these are pretty smart people, and what I love to do with smart people is embarrass them. So we're going to do a little activity, and we're going to build our own beaver dam. But before you put your stuff down, because we're getting ready to move, you guys can do it behind us too. So the first thing we're going to do is, beavers have what kind of tails?
Paddles.
Paddle. Yeah, paddle tails. So I want you to kind of stand up. You guys can kind of make your little paddle tail back there. Get ready.
Here we go.
All right, so we're making our little paddle tails, and we're shaking and we're shaking, and now we're getting ready to build our dams. So let's get our rocks. Oh, we're going to need our clay first. So let's get some mud and water, and let's build that. We're building all this. We're rolling the balls of clay. You guys are doing a great job over there, our studio audience.
Can I choose some sticks?
And then we're going to choose some sticks. So we're going to get the kind of sticks, but I think we're going to chew on them a little bit first. I think that's going to be the most important part, is chew, 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 chew. I think y'all have already had lunch, but some of you might have missed it. Chew your, oh, so delicious. It's like a hamburger. Now we're going to put the sticks in there, and then we may put a little bit more clay, and then we're going to put the rocks. And we're doing this like all day long, so we're really tired, right? We're exhausted. So after we leave the beaver dam, then we're going to paddle our way. Come on, paddle with me. Come on, Leah. I got to see that honey moving. We're paddling back to our lodge, and now we're going to rest a little bit. So give yourself a big round of applause for that, because that was tough.
And do they build them in the daytime or in the nighttime? I was confused about this.
They like to. They're more active in the morning and at night. So
Okay.
I'm more active in the morning and night.
I agree.
I'm very slow. Teachers, do I hear hallelujah? Sometimes we got to have some time to rest. I am very interested. When we first started, you talked about the peoples that lived here before. So whoever wants to, I think Hannah will go with you. Can you talk about local tribes and communities and how their their history is and how they may be helping with the restoration of Beaver Basin?
Absolutely. I mean, people have been living and using living within and using the Beaver Basin for hundreds and thousands of years, and that of course includes a lot of indigenous history. So this whole area is a very important place for a lot of indigenous tribes in the area, and they do continue to use this area just as we all do as well. So it's very important to have their input on different management decisions that we make. We always open that door. We always ask them for their input, and then also indigenous folks still use this area and still come out and, recreate here just like everyone else too.
So if we're going to come out and recreate, can you tell us how visitors and public can do that in the wilderness area and how we can support it? Like what we can and cannot do when we're out there?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest way that you can support wilderness areas is actually by going out and visiting them and using them, and doing that in a way that is practicing leave no trace and is respecting the wilderness area. So when you go in there, a lot of people visit wilderness areas because it offers an opportunity for quiet, solitude, that kind of recreation that you're kind of doing on your own. So not bringing your Bluetooth speaker in to play a bunch of music or having a party in the wilderness area, like kind of maintaining that solitude and that peace and quiet in the wilderness.
I love that. So Leah, I know that you guys are doing some work now where we talked about the tools you're using, the data you're collecting. What are some of the future goals for Beaver Basin and these restoration efforts?
So first of all, we want to continue to monitor areas to make sure that healthy ecosystems are intact. But we're also at this decision-making phase. We're at the very beginning of starting something called an environmental assessment, and that's just another way to collect some more data. So when we do pick an option of what to do, whether it's removing the dams or modifying the dams, we want to make sure whatever action we pick is not harming another aspect of the environment. The wilderness, the dams are very remote. They're not next to roads, and some of them aren't even close to trails. So it's a complicated process. And we're also talking to a lot of different groups that have worked on stream restoration projects before, so that we have increased our knowledge and can make the best make the best decision and the best path forward.
And this was so interesting to me too. So the environmental assessment or an EA is a big deal. It's a big process and you have to kind of explore every option. But when we were out there talking about it, the fact that this is remote can make it sometimes more challenging even to remove the human impacts that are there. Because Leah, you were telling me you would never want to create new roads to get in heavy equipment to then remove something, and we face that a lot at Indiana Dunes too. It's like, would we, in order to remove an impact, would we have to create another impact in order to try to make a change?
Right, and again, I love the way you're working with other people. You're listening to the community. You're working with experts to make sure you're doing the perfect thing for the wilderness, for nature. You're doing the right things, and I like that you're not running into it. You're thinking and gathering data and listening. Hannah, one of your jobs here is to engage kids and families. So how can kids and families and schools and these beautiful teachers and parents, how can they get more involved with this place and maybe even help with restoration in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, the best way to protect wilderness is to visit and to know the resource, because it's preserved for everyone. That's why we have wilderness, is for the benefit of everybody, whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult, it's here for you. So if you can go visit your local wilderness, if you're close enough to visit the Beaver Basin Wilderness, we'd love to have you come visit. If you're not close enough, tell your friends about wilderness and tell your friends, hey, I learned about the Beaver Basin Wilderness at Pictured Rocks and it's really cool, and here's how we can recreate responsibly in wilderness, and just learning about that and sharing with your friends and your family how to best enjoy wilderness.
I love that. Dr. Aaron?
Yeah, I know that it was really important too, again, to kind of understand that a wilderness area with a capital W is actually a specific designation within the Pictured Rocks National Park. So you listed that there are about 4 or 5 goals for a wilderness area. Can you guys share what those are. So when we are recreating out there, we think about maybe our recreation needs to look a little bit different than it does in the rest of the park.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can take that. So when we're talking about preserving wilderness and managing wilderness and visiting wilderness, there's something called wilderness character that we have to keep in mind. And there's five, mostly four things that go into wilderness character. One of those is going to be that that area is natural, that we kind of let nature do its thing. Another is that it's undeveloped. We're not building roads. We're not building, even installing new signs, that sort of thing. That it's untrammeled. We are not getting in the way of nature doing what nature does. And then also that that provides solitude and unconfined recreation. What I was talking about earlier, that peace and quiet, that's why a lot of people love wilderness and want to visit it.
I love it. So I love that Leah and her team has their jobs to do. Dr. Aaron from the Great Lakes Research has their jobs to do. And then Hannah's given you sort of your jobs to do. So before we give you your final job, let's ask our host today, do we have any more questions from the chat? And then I think we have one from our live studio audience.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat. So Autumn wanted to go back to the fish for a second. How many fish live there and how many different kinds of fish are there?
Oh, so this question from Arden is about how many different types of fish live in this area. Leah?
Well, if we're talking about Lowney Creek, we've done some fish surveys. There's many different species. We have dace, which kind of look like minnows. We have some salmon that do make their way up Lowney Creek. What else? We have some of the fish that live in Beaver Lake sometimes will make their way up Lowney Creek. So there's dozens of different types, but we have a couple of different sculpin. That's kind of a funny word. Sculpin, look that up. They look like a fish that likes to stay on the bottom of the stream. So yeah, there's dozens.
Which one's your favorite, Leah?
My favorite. I really do like brook trout. They're very pretty fish.
The brook trout likes
Yeah.
you too. I saw you eyeing that. Your tools are nice, but her tools are cuter. I just have to say. So do we have another question, Miss Zimmerman?
Miss Franklin's class would like to know, how were the rock structures made?
All right, we're going to some geology here. I think Dr. Aaron's having a fit, but this is called pictured rocks for a reason, right? So who wants to take the...
Yeah, I can take geology. So here at Pictured Rocks, we have these awesome sandstone cliffs, and maybe you've seen photos. Unfortunately, I don't have one with me right now, but we have sea arches, and even the structure that we're in front of right now, Miner's Castle, those are all made of sandstone. And sandstone is often a very brittle rock, and so when we get these big storms on Lake Superior, or we have ice storms that come in, and just over the winter ice forms and starts breaking apart these rock faces, and that's what ultimately turns into these beautiful structures that we have here over Lake Superior.
Nice. Miss Zimmerman, we're actually going to go to our studio audience for a moment, and can she come up? Would that be okay? Come on up. And you can represent your team here. Let me let you know, kids, you've been excellent. But now the swag all lands on her. So just come here. I'm just kidding. Come right beside me and tell us your question.
What's it like to be a park ranger?
Oh my gosh, such a great question. So Hannah, I'll start with you and then let anybody else that wants to share.
Being a park ranger is really cool. Getting to experience the park through new people every day, introducing the park to people, or maybe bringing people back to a place that they've been, every year, every summer, and kind of, connecting them to the park and making meaning of the different resources that we have here is really fulfilling.
Leah, why do you like working at the park?
Growing up, I spent a lot of time hiking, camping. So now I've turned that into a career. I really enjoy hiking. I love seeing different areas, still seeing different areas in the park, even though I've been here for so long. And it's just enjoyable also to get out under inland lakes and play in the streams.
So I want to let you know that you just won your class another sticker. So you guys can all do your fingers like this, little finger snaps to thank her for that. But thank you for that question. Ms. Zimmerman, I think we have time for a couple more on your end before we announce our challenge.
All right, we have one last question. What's the connection between the air temperatures and the water temperatures?
Whoa, such a great question. So the question that they had was, what is the difference between the air temperature and the water temperature, which is real important when you're going to go swimming, and there's a difference there. Leah?
I guess I'm wondering if, well, the connection, what I talked about earlier with some of the ponded areas in Lowney Creek, those are a lot warmer just because they're a larger surface area for the sun to warm.
The surface area is this, right? This big area of waters that's spread out.
Yeah, so ponds are much wider than a stream channel. So when you have that wider area, that's just more of an area for the sun to warm. So.
And this is why it's so important with the different sizes of the Great Lakes. So you guys probably have learned in your classes about something called heat capacity. Water has a very high heat capacity, so it can take on a lot of energy before it changes its temperature. And so Lake Superior is so big that it stays cold a lot longer. And the air temperature and the land temperature will respond much more quickly in the seasons than a large body of water, which is why you kind of get some moderation of temperature around there too. So right now the water is warmed up to kind of its peak here in late August, early September. The air is starting to cool down in the evening, but the water is still feeling pretty nice for Lake Superior.
Yeah, I rarely go swimming in Lake Superior until like late July, August, because that's when the water has finally warmed up, like with the air.
In fact, my Charlotte is challenging us to go in the water tonight, Daisha, just so you know.
Well, I like that. So let's go ahead and bring one of our characters from our book up. If you can hand me the book for just a moment. As you know, we have been writing a graphic novel about our journey together, and you may recognize that Charlotte is one of the characters in the book. So you can sort of see her picture here. So Charlotte, let me introduce the challenge and I'm going to ask you a question, okay? Can you hang with me for a second? So kids, here's what we want you to do. Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore is doing amazing work here trying to restore a wilderness, to bring it back to the way it was. They're working on data, they're collecting information about water temperature and sediment. They're working really hard to do this. Hannah is working really hard to make sure that kids understand all of this and how they can get involved. So what we're going to ask you to do is to think about what's happening here at Pictured Rocks. We want you to think about, would it be better to take the dam down, that concrete dam down, or would it be better to create more fish passages, some fish bypasses for the trout that are here? So which one would you choose? If you had to do some research, which we're going to ask you to do, would it be better to take them down or to leave them up and create these bypasses for fish? Teachers, you're going to be given a link where you can share your kids' ideas, their thoughts. It can be video, it can be photographs, it can be drawings. But we want to know what you are thinking. I want to thank so much Save the Dunes, the Great Lakes Research Education Center, Expeditions in Education, and having this all funded by the National Park Foundation. Now, I'm going to throw something on our tech crew that we've not done yet, so let's see how good they are, and if they do well, we'll let them eat dinner together. Corinne, could you come on up, please? We have a group of students here from a local school. The connection is that I knew one of these parents for a very, very long time. When her daughter was just born, we actually met. So they're out here today, and I think that Miss Corinne is going to swear them in as junior rangers. So Miss Corinne, if you'll kind of stand up here where we are, and then you're going to give these kids instructions on what to do, and then as soon as it's over, freeze so I can finish up the broadcast. Now kids at home, you can also become junior rangers. So in fact, why don't today, if you're willing to help preserve and protect the land, then why don't you quietly stand up and take this pledge with us? Ranger Corinne, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Alrighty, so I'm just going to have everyone stand up for me, please and thank you. Do a couple stretches if you need to. You've been sitting for quite some time.
Go stand beside her so she can use your
Reach for the sky, and then touch your toes. Can you touch them? Oh, that's kind of sad. Alrighty. Okay, go ahead and have voices off for me. I need you to raise your right hand, and you're going to repeat after me. Ready? I promise. As a junior ranger. To protect. The trees. The wildlife. The rocks. And the Great Lakes. I also promise. To share about. My time here. And. To have a. Ridiculous. Amount of fun. Congratulations, you are the newest Junior Rangers of Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. We'll get your badges to you in a moment. Good job.
All right, so I'm gonna let you guys sit for just a moment. Charlotte, you have grown up with a mother that loves science, that loves geology.
And the Great Lakes.
And the Great Lakes, and gets you out into nature. Can you encourage other students or tell us anything about your journey with us, or just speak to your heart right now. Tell us.
Well, I do love being out in nature. I think going around the Great Lakes and seeing all the different national parks is super fun. Personally, I think Miners Castle and Pictured Rocks is my favorite right now.
Woo, woo, I love that.
But I'm happy to go visit other national parks.
And that is how we're going to end this today. We want to thank you again, the Rangers, Leah and Dr. Aaron and Hannah, and these amazing students, and one of our characters, Charlotte. A big shout out to Miss Simmerman, Miss Brown, and Miss Bale for helping moderate the chat. Thank you, National Park Foundation, for funding this. On behalf of all of these people here, we are signing out from the Great Lakes Odyssey. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in a few days at Keweenaw National Historic Park. Now you can say goodbye, everyone. Well, all right. Thank you so much. We're out.